G'day guys, on this channel I do like to talk about advanced stuff a bit, but I realize I've never actually gone through the very basics of Premiere Pro. So I thought I'd start with that, so why don't we jump into Premiere Pro? So you jump in here to New Project, presuming this is the first time you've used Premiere. You're going to be met with this screen. Now, first thing we're going to do is give our project a location. So we're going to go choose location. We're going to put in our location and here we go. Now you can see the files have already been created, but it will automatically create all these files for you, which is important because it's where it's going to dump everything and find everything, but you don't need to worry about that at this point. So we're going to start that folder. We're also going to give our project a name. So we are going to call it, for example, test project. Wonderful. We're going to press create. So once you start your new project, you're going to be met with a screen that looks a little bit like this. So this is your blank project. You've got a set of windows up here in this quadrant. You've got a preview window here, which you'll see once we start getting things on the timeline. You've got the timeline itself down here. And then we've got another window with certain tabs along the top here. So there's the tabs there and the tabs here. So we're going to start by bringing footage into our project. So you can click and drag files straight down here into your project because this is your project right here. You can even drag it onto a timeline if you've got one active and it'll automatically populate it. However, there is a better way of doing this. We go into our media browser here and we locate the files we're looking for. Yep, so if we navigate through here and find raw footage, you can see it all comes up here. Now, the reason we do it this way is because technically, according to Adobe, it does provide a little bit of extra stability in your project, which is always a bonus. You're going to be working in editing software. There's going to be crashes and problems, but it also is the better way to do it when you're dealing with cameras like Red, which are going to break up your files every couple of minutes or couple of gig, and you're going to have these split files. Because if you import it this way, it actually understands that they are one continuous file and it will import it as one file, and it's going to save you a lot of headache and a lot of problems in the future. So generally just get into a good habit from the start of bringing files in this way. Now I could just click and drag them all into my project here, but before I do that, I'm going to create a folder within the project called a bin, and that's where all my files are going to lay. So here, I'm going to start a new one and call it raw footage. We're going to click and we're going to drag all of this into our raw footage folder. And there we go, that's it imported. We can toggle open and close the folder here or the bin, and there is our raw footage, simple as that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start a new bin and we're going to call it sequences. Now you might notice that there's nothing really here for us to do. It does say drop media to create a sequence. So we can either right click on a bit of footage, and we can do new sequence from clip, or we can create the sequence manually. So we can go new item sequence. Now under here, you're just going to pick from the presets generally what you want. So for me, 24 frames a second and 1920 by 1080 is probably what I'm going to be working with. You should also later on start paying attention to audio and color settings and things like that, but for your basic project you're probably going to find the right thing up here. You can then alter the preset details right here, so you can see mine's already set to custom. Change your frame rate or your file resolution. You want to always make sure you're on square pixels unless you're working with anamorphic footage, but again, if you are working with anamorphic, you probably already know a bit about editing, so kind of a moot point. And that's pretty much all you'll probably want to be touching in here. The only other thing you do is rename your sequence. So you can call it our first sequence. Done. Hit enter and your sequence is started. So you can see now we've got our video tracks at the top and our audio tracks down the bottom. We can toggle vision on and off of certain tracks by clicking that. We can also toggle mute and solo for certain tracks. That way. Simple enough. Now, all we're going to do is start by bringing all of our raw footage in, click and drag and drop it on the timeline. I'm going to take these two as well, bring them in as well. So there you go, you have raw footage on your timeline, which is a pretty good start. Now, You can either use your plus and minus keys to zoom in and out of your timeline like this, which is great, but I prefer to use Alt and scroll up and down. You've got this fluid motion. You can also use your scroll up and down to move sideways along the timeline. So for me, I instinctively go, oh, if I'm aiming for that clip, move it in a bit, there you go. I can move to that one clip pretty quickly if I want a closer look. So that's it. That's the introduction to setting up the file. Now the next thing we're going to do is save. Control S. Simple as that. All right, moving on to more cutting techniques. Once you have the clip on the timeline, obviously you can drag it around, same as any other editing software you've met out there. The other thing you can do is use the razor tool, which is right here. I like to use the shortcut of C, and you can cut anywhere within a clip and make subclips that we can pull out and move around and so forth. Now you'll notice that I changed back to a pointer right here, which is V. So you go C to cut, V to just move clips around. And obviously Control Z to undo anything you don't want. The other thing you can do is if you hover over the ends of clips, you'll notice these red markers, which are going to be click and drag to shorten and lengthen a clip. Simple as that. You can use more advanced tools like clip edit tools, but we're just looking at the basics for now. This is a crash course as quick as possible. So that's it. We're going to dice up our timeline a little bit. We're going to hit delete and we don't need clips. These blank spaces in between we can select and also press delete to bring all our footage forward. Great little trick that I learnt way too late in my editing career. Maybe we get all our edits just the way we want them, we get them nice and short, we get rid of the clips we don't want. But now we have all this junk on our timeline in the form of these blank spaces. The quickest way to deal with this, highlight the files you want. We're going to go up to sequence and we are going to go to close gap. And that's it. Let's close it all for us. Now we're going to look at audio mixing really quickly. We right click on a clip, we have our audio gain, which is the quickest way to change your volume levels. So adjust gain here, normalize max peaks, or set gain too. So maybe we want to make it a bit louder. Now this is a muted clip, so that's why it's not really showing up with our peak amplitude, but we can turn it up by about 5 decibels. Simple as that. Now we can also, by right clicking, adjust our speed and duration, which is great if we want to slow down a clip or speed up a clip. Simple as that. Just make sure if you are changing the speed, you learn a little about time interpolation, which we'll go over later. But these are our real basic controls when it comes to working within Adobe. Now you might also notice that some of our footage doesn't quite look right. It looks a little bit too zoomed in, particularly this shot here. And that's because it's a 4K shot on a 1080p timeline. So there's a couple of ways we can deal with this. Firstly, we can go up to our effects controls. In there we're going to have our basic controls here, along with any other effects we add to our clip. Right here we can see our scale. If we adjust that to 50%, lo and behold, there's our full clip. There is a quicker way of doing this though. The quick way is to right click on the clip and set to frame size. So if you've got a smaller clip, it's going to zoom in. If you've got a larger clip, it's going to shrink it down. It's just a really great way. You can highlight everything on your timeline at the beginning and just set to frame size, and you can see our little FX markers have indicated that a change to effects on that clip has occurred. And you can see right there, we've zoomed out a bit more. Zoomed in and zoomed out. Same with here, zoomed in, zoomed out. So that's the real basics of this. Now, we have opened our effects control panel, which is wonderful because that brings me neatly onto our next topic, which is effects. Down here, where our project tab is, we have another tab simply called effects. Seems pretty straightforward. You can have a look through them and pick the ones you want, such as video transitions, video effects, etc. Now, if I'm looking for something that I know what it's called in particular, or even, just want to type in blur and see what it has, you can start typing here. So say I want a fade. So I'd be looking for constant power with my audio fade. Boop, right there. And I can simply click and drag it onto my clip. You'll see the fade has appeared right here, and I can now use this tool, which when I hover over will appear, to adjust the duration of my fade. If I were to do the same with the cross dissolve, right here on my clip, you can see I can put it at the end of the clip there. I can start to shrink it. Now the reason it has limited controls for me is because I don't actually have any more of this clip either side. So if I were to shrink this clip like this, I now have enough footage that a cross dissolve can occur. So now when I click and drag it, you can see it can go either side of the cut, or it can actually go over the cut itself. So now we have, if we shuttle through, a nice soft cross dissolve. There you go. And if we would add, say, a color effect to that, call it the Lumetri color tool, which is your probably go-to color tool. Click and drag that on. You can see that has popped up in our effect controls where we have it right here. So here's our basic creative curves and so forth. And that's as simple as turn it on and off through that, or delete it if you don't need it. So that is your quick and dirty introduction to effects. Now let's move on to the next thing. Now a quick note when we are clicking and dragging our footage onto our timeline is you will notice we have multiple video tracks. Like most editing software, it kind of looks from the top track down. So for example, if we had this clip right here and this clip was on top, you'll see the clip on the top first. Now if this clip was smaller, you would notice we still see the clip on top, but we also have the clip underneath as well. So it's looking down through here. The topmost clip is on the top of the stack with the bottommost clip underneath it. If we turn off that bottom clip with that track output toggle right there, you can see it disappears and reappears. So that is the quick and dirty introduction of how the track system works. Okay, now let's do a little bit of triage here, or setup, depending on how you go. Triage for most new users, and that is simply these windows. You can click and drag them around. For example, our history, which has everything we've done since we've opened the file. Now, for example, if I were to click and drag that, you'll see that I can actually drop it on any of these and it's going to magnetize. So say I want to bring it up into this panel, or for example, I want to bring it over to this panel, I can. And you can see other things have popped up. Now, if I were to click it out and bring it up here, and I drop that to be a floating window down here, for example, you can see it's really starting to get messed up. I might drag this out. Now my tools are all over the place. Now it's all messed up. We're going to fix it pretty quickly. We're going to go up to window here, workspaces, and reset to saved layout. And lo and behold, it's going to bring everything back the way it was when we started, which is a huge lifesaver. The other thing is, if you are watching a tutorial and they talk about a different window, for example, if you're learning subtitles and they talk about the text tool or the text window, and you can't find it anywhere along the top or the bottom, it is most likely hidden under your window settings. So you go window, and here's all the other things you can bring in. And you can see text right there, so we can open that. Lo and behold, here is our text window that was hiding from us before. So far, we've got something on the timeline. We've made some basic adjustments. Again, this is a very rushed course. I could go into a lot more detail and a lot more tools, but we're just learning the real basics here to get you going. So we've got everything on the timeline, and we're now ready to export it. So we're going to go File, Export Media, or as you can see the shortcut, which I prefer, Control M. Now, that brings me quickly to another point I forgot to talk about before, and that is in and out points. We have a whole timeline. It may have, a whole bunch of footage hidden up there and a shot down there. We press export, it's going to do everything beginning to end, no matter where you've hidden clips or dropped other things. Maybe we just want this first couple of bits to be our timelines. We'll put these clips together, click and drag them. There we go. We've got our nice little timeline. That's all we actually want to export. So we're going to create a in and out point. So we're going to press I and O, the beginning and the end, and you can see this highlighted grey area at the top with the blue brackets on either side. This is now our work area, and when we export, that's all we're going to export. And when we render within the project, which we'll touch on in another video, then it's only going to be rendering between those two borders. Now we have it all set up, ready to export. we're going to press Control M or File and Export, and it is going to bring us across to the export screen. So here we are. This is our export screen. Now, I've obviously been making my own presets, and so there is a little bit of strange ones in there, but usually you can go through all your presets here. You can find lots of things like a YouTube preset, which is fantastically handy, Vimeo, and so forth. So we can go, where's a good one? You will most likely be using the high quality 1080 or more than likely YouTube 1080. And there you go, that's going to be our preset for our video and audio settings. Now, these blue toggle switches right here are going to turn on and off exporting any audio at all, or any video at all. And you'll note that once you turn one on, you can't turn the other on or off because you have to have either video or audio in a file. It's also important when you start working with captions, you've got to make sure they're turned on. Now, if you want to adjust any of the settings, you simply click the arrow and it's going to drop down. And here we go. Frame size, which is a lot of people call your resolution, frame rate. And if you see these tick boxes, that means matching the sequence or not. So we can't change this because the frame rate should really match our sequence frame rate. But if we do want to change it, we untick that box and we can now adjust it as we need, or tick that box to return to matching the sequence settings. Go down into more and we can adjust our data rate and color space and so forth down here. See, we can adjust the data rate right there. So that's the introduction to video settings. Same for audio settings, as well as, for example, your caption settings, whether you want them burnt in or an SRT file on the side. Now, we have our name that we've placed up here. So it might be called our first sequence. We have our locations. If we click on that, it's going to take us to where the file is actually saved, and this one obviously being the name of the file. So once we have our file name and location all set up, we are almost there. We're ready to go. So we simply press export if we want to export it as is, which we will do in a second. Otherwise, we press send to media encoder. So if you're racking up a whole bunch of renders to be done at once, you can send each one to media encoder, and then it's just going to go through them one by one. That's a fantastic tool, but again, this is a bit too in-depth for our real beginners introduction to Premiere Pro. So there we go, we're going to press export. It's going to pop up with a window and it's going to export for us. And that's it, you are all done. You can now navigate to exactly where this file is and watch your brand new exported video. Again, there is a lot more to this. I was trying to keep it under, 15-20 minutes, which I know seems like a long time, but this is a real kind of drop you in, you can get the footage in and out quickly kind of approach. It's fantastically powerful software and it is used professionally by a lot of people. I've used it to create everything from feature films to television commercials and everything in between. But being more professional software, there is a lot more depth to it, and we can definitely go through some more advanced features later, but at least now we all have a basic understanding and we can all work together. So that's it. That's pretty much my whole video on the basics of Premiere Pro in a very rushed fashion. Hope you didn't have any troubles keeping up, but hopefully see you in the next one. Have a good one.